Let's take a look at a good old vintage world first, the Sony VIP-1000 virtual phones from 1994. Unlike most other headphones or headphone systems, nothing like this had ever existed previously. I'd like to say it's a nice opportunity to appreciate a rare innovation, but innovations are practically Sony's bread and butter, so I'll focus mostly on what makes these so interesting. As a side note, the base unit's model number is VIP-1000, and the headphone unit is actually VIP-1000H, but for the sake of simplicity I will only refer to the entire unit as VIP-1000. Also, this headphone was released in the same year as the original PlayStation. To quickly get the mundane out of the way, the headphone takes after Sony's Studio series, which had already culminated with the CD900ST in 1989 and is still being sold today. The family resemblance is undeniable, as Sony likely wanted a solid foundation to build this system upon, but this is where the similarities end. The backs of the cups are semi-open, and where the earpads should be is a set of 4 spaces that hold a ring-shaped earpad mount, making these just about as open as can be on the ear side. Inside the headphones, in place of their typical 40mm dynamic transducers of the era, there's a set of what look like 40mm silk dome full-range loudspeaker transducers. These speakers are also curiously angled forwards, away from the face. The appearance of this type of dynamic transducer in a headphone is also a world's first, but it is only born out of necessity, as typical dynamic headphone transducers are simply not designed to perform in a totally open sound field. The overall build quality is solid, and I fully expect this to be intact for the next 50 to 100 years, aside from the earpads which have already totally flaked, and the headband underside which went all gummy and I had to clean it all off. So what makes this headphone truly special in headphone history is that it's the world's first 2-channel stereo virtual phones that gives the listener the sense that she can hear 2 front, left and right speakers even from a regular 2-channel stereo source. In a nutshell, the headphone stand contains a DSP unit that makes it sound like you're listening to stereo speakers out in front of you. But it doesn't stop there. A gyroscope built into the headphones can detect your head angle and compensate the sound transfer characteristic from the source to your ears. You can experience the natural sound field and quality as if you were listening from stereo speakers. On the side of the headphones, on the right, there's a button labeled Center Reset. This resets the gyroscope center position, so you can easily reset the direction of the virtual stereo speakers in front of you. So you probably want to know, does it actually work? In a word, yes. Actually, it works incredibly well. Almost every time I put them on, I immediately take them off thinking I've left my loudspeakers on. It's honestly a little spooky, bordering on the metaphysical, and I'm sure anyone who tried this out in 1994 probably felt exactly the same way. Let's take a look at the features of the base unit. Aside from the power button and volume knob, there are 3 buttons: Effect, which turns the DSP on and off; DSP, which selects between standard, live and theater; and Reverb, which selects between min, mid and maximum reverb effect. In my opinion, I don't know why anyone would want to turn off the DSP function, as they immediately become one of the most lifeless stereo headphones I've ever heard. They already suffer a lack of extended bass response, but without DSP virtualization, the soundstage becomes impressively tiny, reduced to a small point inside your head. Standard DSP is fundamentally a representation of a clean stereo sound in a small, properly treated listening environment. Adding reverb, even on the maximum level, does not add much to the sound, increasing the size of the room you're listening in, but the maximum reverb effectively sounds like a large bathroom, and it's not desirable. Theatre and live DSP modes increase the volume and delay of the reverb respectively, and likewise have vastly increased reverberations in comparison to the standard DSP setting. Live DSP with max reverb sounds more like the echoes of listening to an indoor live concert from backstage with all the distant reverberations, and actually also quite similar to how a live indoor concert sounds from outside the main venue or down the hallway from within the restrooms. It's not my recommended setting, but it exists and does a reasonable job of emulating these scenarios from a certain point of view. The theatre mode, with mid-level of reverb, despite only being about 50% of the full potential of the DSP virtualization, is just about as much as I can stand, but ultimately I always prefer to leave it in its purest form on standard with minimum reverb. Let's take a look at the frequency response. You'd be forgiven for thinking it looks like an absolute train wreck. The reason being, you have to remember that almost all open field loudspeaker graphs also look like this. If you look at this graph as a headphone graph, you would likely throw it out in the trash immediately, but as a near field speaker, it makes a lot more sense. With this in mind, you need to look more generally at the overall curve. The mids have a clear upward slope, the bass pretty much starts at 120 Hz, and the treble is mostly well extended and airy. It should go without saying, but the tuning is even reminiscent of a small set of bookshelf speakers, which really helps to sell the illusion. So, unlike Sony's more modern 5.1 and 7.1 virtual and digital surround headphones, which focus more on recreating a high-end cinema experience, the VIP-1000s had an apparently less certain purpose. In the service manual, it's only merely suggested that this headphone system could be used with any audio/video equipment with line output jacks, so it seems that it was really up to the end user for what and how they used it. Sadly, there doesn't appear to be any catalogs or marketing material archived online, so we may never know what the true intention behind these headphones are. In the end, it doesn't matter too much. It's an interesting piece of Sony and headphone history that sparked a clear market for their current cinema virtualization product line, and also some interesting offshoots, like the near-field PFR V1 headphones, which appear to use almost identical transducers. Ultimately, I don't think this headphone is for everyone, and at this stage it probably falls more into the collector category than a daily driver, but as a vintage statement piece or conversation starter, it probably won't fail to drop a few jaws once the DSP is activated. I'll see you in the next one.